My entitled sisters demanded to rent out my vacation home. When I said no, their husbands broke in, and now they're facing charges. So, here's what went down today. My folks thought it'd be fun to throw a barbecue, like older people do. I wasn't really feeling it because I'm not the biggest fan of my two sisters, their hubbies or their kids. My wife and I don't have kids, so it's just not our scene. But my mom laid the guilt trip on my wife, and long story short, we showed up. When we got there, about 20 people were chilling, and my sisters and their husbands were already pretty hammered. My mom was doing her best to keep all the nieces and nephews, ages 7 to 11, from tearing the place apart. Meanwhile, my dad parked himself in the whirlpool with a cooler of beers. My wife and I did the usual awkward small talk with people, ate some food, and sipped on frozen margaritas. My sisters and their husbands took turns giving us grief for showing up late, not wearing swimsuits, and ruining the vibe or whatever. A typical suburb summer hangout. Around 45 minutes in, a couple of the kids thought it'd be funny to push a neighbor into the pool. She was on the steps, so she didn't get all wet, but she was clearly pissed and just dried off and left without causing a scene. My sisters and their husbands thought it was all hilarious. Soon after, while I was chatting by the pool, I saw 3 kids charging at me out of the corner of my eye, obviously planning to do the same. I sidestepped them, and all 3 ended up taking a dive into the pool. Everyone, including us, cracked up, but the moms, who were totally wasted, started freaking out because apparently 2 of the kids couldn't swim. I wasn't dressed to swim, so I stepped back and let others handle the rescue. The kids were bawling like they'd lost a limb, and that's when chaos erupted. The 4 drunken parents started yelling at everyone, especially me, blaming me for almost letting their kids drown and for their phones being used by the kids to film the prank, ending up at the bottom of the pool. One brother-in-law tried to retrieve them, but given his state, it wasn't happening. No one else offered to help. No surprise there, seeing as my sisters were in full meltdown mode. I told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids, and if anything bad had happened, it was on them, not me. Some pretty heated words were exchanged, and my wife and I decided to bail when the other brother-in-law face-planted while screaming at us. Now they're saying I should have just let the kids push me in and ruined my phone for their fun. Side note, Dad never left his whirlpool sanctuary. Reflecting on it, I know they're just kids having fun, but it's really a parenting issue. I wish we had skipped the event. It's nice seeing my folks and their neighbors, but dealing with my sisters is exhausting. There's some envy there because my wife and I have careers, are child-free, and manage our finances better, which allows us to travel and avoid the chaos that comes with having kids. This seems to grate on them, and we often deal with petty behavior as a result. That's why I didn't want to go, but my wife, the optimist, usually enjoys seeing them. Hopefully she won't feel guilted into going next time. She's much more forgiving, but I think she's over it after this mess. My dad's awesome, just super chill and enjoying the retired life. He hung out with some dudes and watched everything unfold. My mom's cool too, but this whole ordeal upset her. The kids were fine by the end and were inside watching TV. The older niece, I'm guessing, led the pool charge. She's usually the instigator. About my folks hosting the barbecue. It was a make-up 4th of July thing because one sister's family was on vacation then. They love hosting and have a perfect house for it. The kids were promised sparklers, which added to the chaos. All neighbors are older, like my parents. In an update from August 17th, nearly a month later, my folks assured me the kids are actually good swimmers and regularly use the pool. They weren't allowed in the deep end, though, which is where they ended up. The party ended on a bad note with my brother-in-law needing stitches after his dive to the floor. My sister started a nasty group text, which led my wife and me to block them. My parents were upset about the messages, so they called a meeting with my sisters and their husbands to lay down some boundaries. This resulted in a half-hearted apology over my mom's phone. I unblocked them, thinking it was settled, but then got a text asking about paying for the ruined phones. Seriously, WTF? I forwarded that to my folks and blocked them again. This led to my dad tearing into them and banning them from grandkids visiting, using the vacation house, which my wife and I actually own, unbeknownst to them, and basically laying down the law. This was unusual for my usually laid-back parents, but they'd had enough. A few days later, my sisters and their husbands showed up unannounced to apologize while we were out to dinner. One sister even called me at work. We've decided keeping our distance is best for now and haven't talked to them in over 3 weeks. So, I've had it. They can go kick rocks. Honestly, it's only been a month since I blocked them, but life's been so much more chill without their constant little dramas. They're not bad people, just kind of annoying and petty. I don't even care about them using the cabin. Technically, it's ours, but we actually got it for my parents. They're the as who manage it and decide who gets to use it when they're not around. We handle all the expenses and taxes. This whole mess has made it clear what we'll do with the place when my parents get older. I was ready to take over managing it, but now I know we'll just sell it. If we want to hit the mountains, we'll just rent an Airbnb. My parents are pretty chill and live by the live and let live mantra. I think they'll cool down soon, but that's their call. We're not going to any family get-togethers for now. My sisters are probably freaking out, thinking I won't let them use the cabin. But that's up to Mom and Dad for now. It also crushes my sister's dream of building a family compound on the property. She's had it in her head for a while, but I've just ignored it. The land could fit at least 3 houses with killer views because it's at the end of a road. They don't really mean their apologies. They just want stuff from us. I'm totally on board with the idea that their apologies aren't genuine. I'm not planning to deal with them anytime soon. Regarding the vacation house, it's my parents' call. I own it and cover the costs, but I bought it for them to enjoy. They're great people and have always wanted a getaway spot for the family, which they couldn't have afforded otherwise. I was able to afford it because I've been lucky financially, and caught a big bonus the same year I moved in with my wife. I'm not fussed if my folks let my siblings use it, but I'll admit it's kind of satisfying to see my sister squirm about me affording it without telling them. Dad changed the lock code last week, so now only a few of us have it. Regarding Mom babysitting, she's been visiting each sister's place once a week to hang out with the kids. Once school started, she planned to pick each set up from school on different days and spend the evening with them. She says having all 5 at once is overwhelming, but they're fine individually. Mom and Dad told me they don't plan on inviting my sisters or their families over anytime soon, and are enjoying the peace. I'm guessing they were over the old dynamics and used recent drama as an excuse to change things up. Now, on why that post got removed from Ida. Apparently, some property damage was involved. Something about phones being trashed, which seems ridiculous to me. Update from August 26, 2023. These last few days have been wild. I thought things were bad before, but this week took it to another level. To give you some background, my folks aren't great at saving money. I've been doing their taxes for ages, so I know their financial situation inside out. Their house is paid off, and they have minimal debt, but there's not much saved for retirement. They get Social Security. Dad has a decent pension, and there's a small savings pot, but no secret stash. I bought their current car as a retirement gift so they could enjoy something nice. The first car in 20 years they didn't have to lease. My sisters, on the other hand, are convinced our folks are loaded and that they'll inherit everything since I don't need more money. Turns out, my oldest sister and her husband have been living beyond their means and are in financial trouble. They've maxed out their credit cards and are behind on car leases, with one about to be repossessed. She admitted all this to Mom recently because they need a loan and revealed she's been secretly renting out the cabin for extra cash, making over $2,000 for a weekend or $4,000 for a week. With her being cut off, she's had to cancel bookings and now worries they'll lose everything. Mom and Dad aren't in a position to help, and my other sister knew about the renting but never said anything. I suspect she's done it too. I once showed up with an ATV on strangers there and just let it slide, thinking she'd loaned it to friends. My parents were stressed hearing this, with Mom more worried and Dad just mad. They told me because they figured the sisters would hound me next, which they did. On Thursday, my sisters showed up at my place, without their husbands, waited outside until I got home. I either had to face them outside or let them in, so I chose the latter. They asked me to give them access to the cabin again and pitched that I should fund their kids' college tuitions because it's what family does. I listened, then called them out with what my parents told me. That blew things up. Denial, tears, shouting, you name it. My ears are still ringing from it. I admit I said some harsh truths before they left after an hour. I crashed for a bit, and when I got up, my wife was home, saying she had to block more numbers because the sisters were blowing up our phones from new ones. My parents have asked me to call, probably because the sisters spun them a story. I'm not ready to go through all that again yet. Normally, I've got a lot of energy, but this drama's really draining me. I managed to drive up to the cabin today and padlock the gate. I'm the only one with a key, so hopefully that'll keep my siblings away. They'd probably give up walking the 400 yards uphill to get there anyway. New update from here, September 12th, 2023. So, yet another update on this family circus. I figured it was time to share, since a lot's happened these past 2 weeks. After my sisters came to my place, my parents decided they were done managing the cabin. Seems like the sisters were bugging them to use it again. My parents basically threw the responsibility of the place my way, saying it's my problem now. They used to keep track of who was using it and handle maintenance, but they don't want to be in the middle of this mess anymore. I can't blame them, though it's disappointing since the cabin was meant to be their chill spot. They used it regularly, and I never minded them letting my sisters and their families use it. After all, it's always felt like my parents' place anyway. So here's the deal. I technically own this property, but the folks used to have free reign over it. Now, things have changed because they can't get in without my say-so, and honestly, it turns the whole situation on its head. I took a bunch of steps to lock the place down. For starters, I locked the gate with a hefty chain and the best lock I could find. I also reset all the door keypads with fresh codes. We even got some security cameras installed, and I'm kind of stoked about this high-res one that overlooks the valley. Yeah, the setup cost way more than I expected, but hey, peace of mind, right? Oh, and the installer put up signs saying the whole place is under video surveillance. I also put this heavy-duty lock on the water shutoff valve, and man, I hope I never lose the keys to it. Getting it off would be a nightmare. The only person I've told about the water thing is my wife, and we're the only ones with the keys. Anyway, last week, both of my brothers-in-law called me at work, trying to persuade me to let them use the house like the good old days. The older one had even planned a guy's weekend up there, but was pretty ticked when he got locked out because of the new gate lock. He was all over the place on the call, swinging from aggressive to playing the victim. At one point, he even threatened to tear the gate out of the ground. During our chat, he let slip that they've been renting the place out to their friends because they needed the cash and accused me of wrecking their little side gig. He even wanted me to pay back their guests. Yeah, right. I should have recorded the whole thing, but I have no idea how to do to. hat from an office phone. The other brother-in-law sounded like he was just calling because my sister made him. He didn't put up much of a fight when I told him not to plan on using the place anymore. So yeah, I laid down the law. No more access, stop asking. Now I'm considering selling the vacation home because my wife and I don't use it enough to justify hanging on to it, and family gatherings aren't happening anytime soon. I brought up selling it to my parents, and their response was pretty much indifferent. Realistically, I'd make a nice profit from selling it. It's in a great spot with awesome views at the end of a private road. But I'm holding off for now. I don't want to make an emotional decision while things are still heated. I'm not talking to my sisters at the moment and won't be reaching out to them. I have no clue what's going on between them and my parents, and honestly, I'd rather not know. On the plus side, my wife and I had a nice dinner with my folks last week at this new restaurant, and thankfully, no one brought up any of this drama. My mom filled us in on the nieces and nephews, who she's been visiting at their homes. Sorry this update isn't full of laughs, but sometimes that's just life. Update for October 16th, 2023, a month later. Some folks were asking for an update, so here it goes. I hired a guy to look after the vacation home. He's local, takes care of his parents, and manages a bunch of properties. Some vacation spots, some weekend getaways like ours. He has access to our camera feeds and does a physical check every week or two. I'm thinking he's got the best gig in the mountains, getting paid to drive around with his dog, walk around properties, and chill on decks. Plus, there's a camera by the road that snaps pics of any cars that go by. We pay him $450 a month, and he handles basic maintenance and repairs as needed. He's buddies with all the local sheriff's deputies, too, so I've got loads of peace of mind. He even shares photos from his walks once or twice a week. I need to give a shout-out to my parents. They're seriously awesome. Tonight at dinner, they told me my sisters were pestering them to get me to open up the vacation house for a big family Thanksgiving. Apparently, Thanksgiving up there had become a tradition, but not for my wife and me. We've only been once in years. My dad straight up refused to bug me about it because he knew my answer would be no. They came up with a great plan. If everyone chips in, they'll rent an Airbnb in the mountains for Thanksgiving. Otherwise, they'll host at their place, or one of my sisters can step up. This, of course, led to a sisterly spat. Middle sis was all in for the Airbnb idea, but the oldest doesn't have the cash. We've passed the deadline for the Airbnb, so it looks like it'll be at my parents' place. We're sitting this one out. My parents asked me to hold off on selling the place for now. They'd like to use it occasionally, but only once my sisters accept the new situation. I think they're hoping for one big happy family reunion there someday. But let's be real, it's not happening. I'm ready to sell and move on, but if my folks use it every now and then, I can live with that. Plus, the property's value is only going up. My wife and I are keeping our distance from my sisters and their husbands. They've tried calling us from new numbers. Thanks a lot, Google Voice, and left messages saying we should meet up for our parents' sake to hash out some kind of arrangement. They've called my wife, too. I'm glad I've always had the rule of not answering calls from numbers I don't recognize. I can't tell if they're just delusional or think they can pressure me into giving them access again, but frankly, I don't care. My parents told me that my oldest sister and her husband are bailing on their SUV and big truck leases and selling their jet skis and other things they never really needed. That's going to be tough on her because she loves to show off and won't like driving something older or cheaper. My brother-in-law's whole identity is wrapped up in that truck. It's even tattooed on him, which is just one reason we never hung out. Some people have suggested turning the vacation home into an Airbnb, but I'm not planning on it anytime soon. Sure, it'd make money, but it'd stir up drama with the family and stress out my parents. Plus, it'd be a pain to move my folks' personal stuff out with nowhere to store it, and the wear and tear on the place isn't something I want to deal with, even with a manager handling it. It's just not worth it to me. Update for November 27, 2023, 1.5 months later. I wrote most of this yesterday, but I was all wound up, so I decided to wait. Turns out, I'm still on edge, so sorry if this is all over the place. Things have seriously gone sideways. I never thought it'd come to this, but here we are. My brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and got arrested. They're facing charges of breaking and entering, property damage, and making threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. I'm not dropping the charges unless they cover all the damage they did. As far as I know, they were still locked up as of Saturday night, but I assume they're out now. I thought things had calmed down. I hadn't heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents visited the house for a week and had a blast. David, the property manager I hired, has been fantastic. He's taken care of a few repairs I asked for, and I've given him a list to work on. He regularly sends out photos of wildlife or sunsets to his clients, which almost makes me want to visit. Anyway, the Friday after Thanksgiving, my brothers-in-law showed up at the vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the gate chain, messing up the gate in the process. They tried to break in through the front door, ruining the lock and damaging the door. They finally got in through the utility room door and busted through another locked door inside. For some reason, they also broke into the barn. When they left through the front door, the sheriff's deputies and David were waiting for them. David gets alerts from the camera system when there's activity, so he called the sheriff's department as soon as he saw what was happening. He said the guys tried to talk their way out of it, but the deputies weren't buying it. Apparently, breaking into an empty house is a big deal up there, usually something meth heads do to loot the place. My brothers-in-law lost it when they got arrested, but that's another story. So there was this whole messy situation where my brothers-in-law were gonna really mess me up, which, you know, is a terrible idea when cops are around. David and the sheriff's office tried to get a hold of me and my wife to figure out how we wanted to handle it. But we were chilling with her parents and left our phones in the car to really soak up the whole vacation vibe. So they went ahead and took care of the bills, which is what I would have told them to do anyway. From jail, the brothers-in-law called their wives, who understandably freaked out. They also tried reaching my folks, who were blocked, and then began this whole scramble to find a lawyer over the holiday weekend in a rural area. My older sister was out of cash, her cards maxed, so if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to cover it for her husband too. They're still locked up as of Saturday afternoon. We finally checked our phones late Friday, on the way back home, and saw a tamahawa of calls and messages from my parents, David, and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a good day. I was in a great mood until I saw my phone. My wife went through the texts and voicemails, and by the time we got home, I had a decent idea of what had gone down. I tried to get past being ticked off, but couldn't. So I called David to get the full story, which only made me angrier. I wrapped up Friday by calling the sheriff's department, making it clear there was no misunderstanding. They shouldn't have been on my property, and I wanted to press charges. I didn't even call my folks back and barely slept. Waited until Saturday afternoon to call them, and they were pretty shaken, especially my mom. My sisters had pushed my parents to tell me to drop the charges, but I was like, no way, not until I talked to a lawyer and got paid in full for all the damage. My mom was in tears by the end of the call, which sucked, but my dad suggested we needed a fresh start, though he agreed they should pay for the damage. I haven't gone to the property yet. I'm avoiding seeing the damage in person, 'cause I'll probably lose it. The photos are bad enough. I'm aiming to go tomorrow or Wednesday, but I can't just bail from work for non-emergencies. I left messages with 2 lawyer friends for recommendations to go after my sisters and their husbands. I'm not sure exactly what I'll do, but I'm aiming for restraining orders. I've got all their texts, so that might help. I'm seriously thinking about suing them for the rental money they made. Not that I care about the cash, but it'll make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are off now. A few extra things. First, the brothers-in-law had no idea I hired someone to keep an eye on things, or that there are cameras now. My parents knew but didn't tell them to avoid drama. There are signs about the cameras and no trespassing. Second, my wife's totally over it. Can't blame her. She's been super patient, but now she's reached her limit and let me know. She told me to handle this, but believes they all need a hard lesson. Third, my older brother-in-law might not face job issues, but my middle brother-in-law could because of his security clearance. I hope that pushes him to pay for the damages quickly. Fourth, David, the caretaker, has an interesting history. I thought he knew the deputies because they're all locals, but turns out he was a big city cop, got shot on duty, and moved here for a quieter life. His dog is a certified service animal. Fifth, I don't want to see or talk to these jerks, ever. I know that goes against my urge to make their lives hell, but hey, some people said I should have been tougher from the start, but I avoided it to spare my parents the stress. Well, they're stressed now anyway. My wife doesn't want to hear about this anymore and says it's my problem, so she's stepping back. I think she's done dealing with it beyond hearing me rant. As for why they broke in, I'm guessing they planned some family getaways and were renting it out. It's deer season until the year's end. They've used it before as a base for big hunt trips. It sleeps a lot of people, and one event could make them a ton of cash. Also explains why they broke into the barn. I bought a 6-seater mule a while back, which they'd want to use. I doubt they meant to trash the place. It's important to my dad, and they like him. Update. Fast forward to December 2nd, a Saturday. And I'm posting again, 'cause a lot's happened in just 2 days. On Thursday, I got this envelope at my office with a letter from my brothers-in-law and a $5,000 check inside. The letter had a surprisingly genuine apology. They admitted to breaking in and offered to pay more if needed. They promised to stay away unless my wife and I invite them. They also begged me to drop the charges ASAP, as they might lose their jobs, and they agreed to a restraining order or whatever else was needed. Honestly, it was shocking. Total 180 from their usual antics. I was already set to meet with a lawyer about suing them over the damage and getting a restraining order. Told him what I got, and he suggested settling things with them and signing a mutual release agreement. He said we'd likely win a lawsuit, but it might take years, with big legal fees up front, and we might never see any cash. Plus, we could keep the $5,000 no matter what. He's drafting up the agreement to be ready for Monday, which will include what's basically a civil restraining order. I asked my property manager to estimate repair costs, and he thinks it'll be around $4,000, mostly for the front door. On Friday, my lawyer told the brothers-in-law about our proposal and advised them to get lawyers. They agreed. Middle brother-in-law said they could either pay for damages or hire a lawyer, but not both, and thought a lawyer wouldn't help since they're clearly in the wrong. His big worry is if the charges could be dropped. They seem willing to do whatever it takes to make this disappear. My lawyer also reached out to the DA's office on Friday about dropping the charges, left a message for the prosecutor, but hasn't talked to them yet. He thinks they'll likely dismiss the charges since the brothers-in-law are paying up and have clean records, but he's not a criminal lawyer. I should be ready to drive there Monday or Tuesday to meet the prosecutor and ask for the charges to be dropped. So, my advisor has basically said I should keep my distance from my sisters and their husbands for the next 6 months, and sticking to our agreement is crucial for any future interactions. I think these guys might have realized what's at risk for them, like big legal fees, fines, and possibly even jail time for up to 120 days. Plus, one of them needs to keep a clean record for his job's security clearance, so they're kind of desperate to keep their regular lives intact. This situation is far from ideal, but at least it helps me move past the legal mess and money issues I've been tangled in for months. Honestly, I doubt we'll ever have a normal relationship, which is fine by me. I just want to wrap this up, move on, and never have to talk to them again. I'm exhausted, and my wife feels the same. On a side note, getting a written apology was surprisingly meaningful to me, although I never expected it. The money doesn't feel like a big deal right now, but I'm not going to say no to it. I'm pretty sure my middle sister and her husband came up with the money since the cashier's check is from his work's credit union. Once everything's signed, I'll probably just add a little update here. Writing all this out really helped clear my head, and the feedback has been invaluable, so thank you all. I wouldn't wish this nonsense on anyone. Honestly, when I finally got home last Thursday night, I cried with relief, thinking it might all be over. I'm not going to mention this settlement to my parents until it's officially signed. If my sisters and their husbands want to spill the beans, that's on them. Fast forward to December 7th, 2023, 5 days later. I met with my lawyer on Tuesday, went through the agreement, tweaked a few details, and then he sent it over to my sisters and brothers-in-law. The deal included them covering my lawyer's fees, about $3,000, which they didn't love but had to accept or risk us going after them for all sorts of things like rental income, damage repairs, emotional distress, you name it. My lawyer also made it clear we'd push for prosecution. They didn't agree. Eventually, they signed. I wasn't there, but I heard it was tense, with one of my brothers-in-law taking charge, telling my sisters to shut up or he'd make a deal on his own and leave them to sort themselves out. They brought another cashier's check for $10,500, claiming that was all they had, which we decided to accept as the final payment. From what I heard, the atmosphere was frosty, but they managed to get through it without a scene. Yesterday, I drove to the vacation house to check the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was just pointless. I was so angry I considered covering the repair costs myself just to make their lives miserable. After trying to cool off and failing, I called a good friend who let me vent for over an hour, helping me focus on moving forward, even though I'm not entirely sure that's what I want yet. After calming down enough to eat, I felt slightly better. I then went to the DA's office. They weren't expecting me, so I had to wait, but I eventually spoke with the assistant DA handling the case. Since I don't want to prosecute and the bills have been settled, they're willing to drop all charges except for trespassing, which will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The plan is for them to plead guilty and pay a fine set by the judge. If they contest the trespassing or cause any trouble, it'll be worse for them. It also helped that they didn't resist arrest. I visited the sheriff's office to thank them for their quick response and spoke to the dispatch person because I couldn't meet the deputies personally. I also tried meeting up with David, the property manager, but didn't manage to connect with him. The agreement includes a no-contact clause, meaning if any of us happen to be in the same place, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. Any communication has to go through our attorneys or other agreed-upon third parties. They get to keep the rental income from the vacation house, which is my big concession, unless there are tax issues, in which case they have to handle it. We've agreed to release each other from other liabilities up to now. There's more to it, but those are the main points. My wife and I will sign the agreement later today, after which I can't discuss most of this, but might hint at it. I think this might be my last update on all this, but I'll still respond to comments if I can. Posting about this and reading everyone's advice has been a lifeline and probably helped me deal with this in a pretty healthy way, so thank you all again. I did struggle with not being vindictive, and even though I might regret it if they stir up more drama, I'm glad I took the high road. If they stick to the agreement, we should be good. The family dynamics are pretty messed up, though. I only told my parents we're trying to work things out and nothing more. My sisters might have spun their own version, but I had to do what was best for my wife and me. The agreement is basically making formal what's been happening for months. It's not how my parents wanted things, but I'm okay with it. As for my sisters, they've never really shown this kind of entitlement toward me before. We were never super close, but not enemies either. Looking back, I think they started resenting me when I bought a loft at 25. They hadn't bought homes yet, and I think they didn't like that I got there first. It got worse when I met my wife, who comes from a wealthy family, and they accused me of being elitist. Our wedding was fancy but reasonable, and they were envious. After that, we started distancing ourselves from them, helped by the profit from selling my loft, being frugal, and not having a house payment, which let me buy a vacatio and home for my parents. They were okay with keeping that under wraps because they knew my sisters would claim I used my wife's money, which isn't true, though our separate finances helped. I thought we were basically okay, even if I didn't enjoy spending more than half a day with them. I didn't realize they'd become so entitled, and my brothers-in-law weren't really on my radar, since we didn't have much in common. It's a long way of saying I didn't know they were like this. One last thought. My little fantasy is never hearing from them again.